Hi, awesome actor artists. I'm Janelle Snow, and I'm here today to give you my top 4 tips for laying the foundation for your audition preparation. So, tip number 1: what's your response when you get invited to an audition? If you're like me, you have found yourself freaking out about how little time you have to learn copy, or wondering how you're going to make it to that audition time because there was somewhere else you were supposed to be, or reading the breakdown and thinking, oh my gosh, they think I'm that old or that young, or I look like that, or I'm like that. And none of those responses creates any kind of joy or creative flow. So I've tried to train my brain, and I invite you to train your brain to take a moment anytime you receive an audition invitation to just be excited, because in all likelihood, you've chosen to be an actor. In the 20 years I've been teaching actors, I've never had someone come up to me and say, hey, you know what? I actually have been forced to be an actor. So if this is you, if you've chosen to be an actor, if it's something that you consider your calling or your mission, or just something you do for fun, take that moment to recognize that another creative artist has invited you into their virtual or physical space, and they are going to give you their attention, and they're going to watch you perform. And that's something that we've said we love to do because we're actors, right? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2: ask yourself, what is the world of the play? Now, here I'm specifically talking about TV and film copy, because if you're auditioning for a play, I'm assuming that you actually have the whole play to read, in which case you should do that. And hopefully that will help you answer the question, what is the world of the play? But in TV and film, it's common to not get a whole script sometimes and still have to execute an audition. So here's where you need to tease out the information with a little bit more effort. So the first thing I recommend is for you to picture yourself in the finished product, whether it's a commercial or a television show or a feature film. The good news is that you've spent a lot of hours watching TV and film, watching a screen. And so it shouldn't be too taxing for your imagination when you get a piece of copy to picture yourself at the premiere, or maybe just in your own living room watching your television and seeing your face on it playing the role that you've been asked to audition for. That's a way to do it without having to attach any intellectual questions. But in case you want to use intellectual questions, here they are. Ask yourself how this world treats a sense of humor. Does it have a big physical sense of humor? Or does it have gallows humor? Or does it have very little humor at all? Ask yourself, how does this genre treat danger or stakes? Is there the threat of someone really getting hurt? Or do we know that at the end of the day, everyone's going to be fine? Another question you might ask is, how does the world of this play treat time? Are people moving really quickly to get somewhere, to get to a conclusion, to solve a problem? Or is it a drama where the people sit in their thoughts and emotions, and perhaps the exchanges happen not quite so rapidly? Those are intellectual ways to tease out what the world of the play is. Of course, if you're auditioning for a show that's been on the air, then this is a no-brainer. Watch the show. They're going to expect you to have watched the show. And if you have a scene with a series regular, they're going to expect you to know who that person is. But let's say it's a pilot or a feature film, so it's not on the air, and you won't be able to see something like it. Well, then look at who wrote it. Look at the viewing platform. Is it going to be on a major network? Is it going to be on a small indie channel? Is it a Disney show? Because that's going to help you reduce all of the potential possibilities into a few that make sense. So what is the world of the play? If you don't ask that question, then if you are playing a babysitter and you're at the park with a 12-year-old and the 12-year-old is lost, and the cops come up to you and ask you where that 12-year-old is, if your answer is, I don't know, he was here a minute ago. If the show is Chicago PD, you might have a little bit of urgency about where that kid is. But if it's young Sheldon, you might be like, I don't know where the kid is, because he's probably with young Sheldon getting into some shenanigans. So there you go. Tip number 2. What's the world of play? Tip number 3. How does my scene serve the play? So, usually when I get to this question, I recommend reverse engineering, which is to say, picture yourself at the end of the shoot, and the director comes up to you and says, "Oh, your work is fantastic, but the shoot is running long and we need to make some cuts. Tell me why your scene should still be in the play, the teleplay in this case." So if it's a commercial and the one scene is the play, then the answer is because the point of this play is to sell a product and I'm the person using the product, or I am the person who needs the product, or I'm the person who recommends the product. Easy peasy. But when you get to TV and film, especially when you don't have a script, you're just making your best guess. There's no answer key. It's not about being right or wrong. It's again about narrowing the field of choices so that your choice makes sense as a part of a whole. So, as I mentioned in tip number 2, if you have a scene with a series regular, let's say a doctor on Chicago Med, and you are presenting as a patient with an illness, and the doctor is going to try to get some test results and maybe fast track them by working around the system, then the actual reason why that scene is in the play is to highlight what that series regular is trying to do to make you well. So you might be sick, but the scene's actually not about you being sick. Does that make sense? So ask yourself, when you are working on a scene, what is vital about that scene? Why won't it end up on the cutting room floor when the shoot is over? And again, you could be right, you could be wrong, but having an answer will make sure that you make grounded choices that reflect that the scene is part of an entire teleplay and not a standalone. So that's tip number 3. And tip number 4, how does my character serve the scene? It's very closely related to tip number 3, how does my scene serve the play? But it gets drilled down to your specific choices about your character and about your relationship and about your intention. And once again, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about making a strong choice that reflects that you recognize that it's part of a whole, even if you don't have access to the whole. So, for example, if you were playing a bartender and the cops come in and they show you a picture of someone and they ask you if you remember seeing that person last night in the bar. And you tell them, yes, you did see them. And it was around 10 o'clock. And no, they weren't alone. They were with a group of people, etc., etc. Then how your character is serving the scene is providing information for that cop so that they can go out and try to identify a perpetrator or punish someone for a crime committed. So even though you want to make strong choices about your world, it's important to keep in mind that you're serving a scene that is serving a play that's taking place in a specific world. And you should be excited about doing it. And I just went through all of the tips 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to the studio and maybe I'll do a little Q&A. Thanks.